I always knew that my parents' love wasn't unconditional. I just didn't realize how expensive it could be to lose it. When my sister walked down the aisle to the sound of fireworks, drowning in the luxury paid for by other people's lives, my parents looked at her with pride, not even noticing how their own future was crumbling. I was silent then, gritting my teeth, but now, looking at the ruins of their once prosperous life, I wonder if it was worth explaining all this to them. Maybe there are mistakes that a person should pay for himself. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy watching. My name is Samantha, and I'm 37 years old. I've never considered my life to be special, but looking back, I realize how much I've been through and how many decisions I've had to make to get to where I am now. Our family has never been rich, but we have managed. My parents did their best to give me and my younger sister Sheila everything we needed. Mom retired early due to health problems, and since then she has spent most of her time at home, doing the housework and taking care of us. Dad continued to work, looking forward to retiring in 2 years. He often said that he wanted to finally relax, do gardening, and maybe even travel around the country with his mother. Then I had a sister, Sheila, who was 12 years younger than me. Her parents doted on her. She grew up the darling of the family, smart, beautiful, lively. I wasn't jealous, but rather, I felt responsible for her. When I graduated from college, I no longer had time for childish activities. I got a decent job and soon moved in with my boyfriend, Bruce. Bruce wasn't exactly a romantic, but maybe that's why we got along so well. We were both pragmatists. We both looked at life realistically. While I was building a career and thinking about the future, Sheila was studying at college, carefree enjoying her college years. You know, you don't have to keep supporting them, Bruce said, watching me transfer money to my parents. They're adults, too. Listen, I replied, shaking my head, they're not kids, but they need help. Their house is falling apart, and I want them to have something better in retirement. And it was true. Our old house, a 2-story dilapidated building in which I grew up, became more and more problematic every year. The last winter has only made the situation worse. I invited contractors to assess the damage, and I still remember the look on the main contractor's face as he walked around the rooms, sighing heavily and shaking his head. "Ma'am, it's going to cost more to fix this one than to build a new one," he said, pointing to extensive water damage and structural problems. "You will be throwing away good money for bad ones." Then I made a decision that at that moment seemed to me the only right one. I opened a joint savings account with my parents, planning to help them buy a new house. The goal was clear: save up $200,000, add to this money the proceeds from the sale of the old house and buy the parents something safe and comfortable for their quiet retirement. Every month, I set aside a significant portion of my salary for this account, watching with satisfaction as the balance steadily grew. $50,000, then $100,000, each step seemed to be a step closer to providing the parents with everything they needed. Bruce and I lived modestly, giving up our own dreams of buying a home. But I didn't regret it. Family always came first for me. It was a typical Sunday family dinner. We were sitting at the table, enjoying Mom's stew, listening to the rain outside the window. Everything was normal and calm, until Sheila suddenly cleared her throat, attracting everyone's attention. I looked up and saw her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Thomas and I are getting married," she announced, solemnly raising her left hand, on which a huge diamond ring sparkled. Mom jumped up from her chair, with a joyful squeal, rushing to hug Sheila, and Dad beamed with pride. I smiled, genuinely happy for my sister. Thomas came from a good family, treated her well, and they seemed like the perfect couple. But then there was a shock that changed everything. I planned everything, built my life so that my parents would feel safe, so that Sheila would have the opportunity to indulge in nothing, and Bruce and I could create our own cozy world, even if not immediately. But that evening, when my sister continued her story with shining eyes, I suddenly felt how this world began to crumble right in front of my eyes. She took out her phone, proudly showing us the screen, which featured a Pinterest board filled with all sorts of wedding ideas. A luxurious place for the ceremony, the decor, surrounded by white and pink flowers, exquisite dishes at the banquet, the perfect dress, shining in the spotlight. There was careful planning in every detail, but there wasn't a drop of intelligence. "It's going to cost about $300,000, Sheila announced cheerfully, not even noticing how I choked on the water, almost dropping the glass in surprise. $300,000? I asked, sure I'd misheard. Yes, she replied serenely, as if it were the most mundane purchase. Sheila, this is crazy. There was an oppressive silence in the room. My parents exchanged awkward glances, avoiding looking at me, while my sister, on the contrary, looked straight into my eyes with a challenge. I had never seen such an expression on her face, a mixture of undeniable entitlement and cold determination. Thomas suggested we do something more modest, she said, waving her hand dismissively. Only family and close friends. But I told him I could handle the expenses. I want to show his family that we are no worse than them. I felt a chill. And how exactly are you going to pay for it? Something in the back of my mind was telling me the answer, but I still hoped I was wrong. Sheila smiled sweetly, as if it was a matter of course. You will help me, of course. You've always helped the family. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at my parents, hoping that they would finally step in, that they would say something that would bring my sister back to reality, but Mom just stared at her plate, and Dad suddenly found his coffee incredibly interesting. I took a deep breath, suppressing my growing irritation, and carefully said, I can give you $20,000 for the wedding. And another $10,000 as a gift. That's a lot of money. But Sheila's face instantly clouded over. This is ridiculous, Samantha, her voice darkened with annoyance. You have a lot more. This is my only chance to have my dream wedding, to show Thomas's family that I'm not some poor girl they'll look down on. I desperately turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, please tell her this is crazy. Tell her she doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. But what Mom said next hit me like a knife in my heart. Maybe Sheila's right, dear. We really had to deny her a lot of things when she was growing up. She deserves her own special day. I looked at her in disbelief, but before I could respond, Sheila leaned over and spat out angrily, You're just jealous. For what? I asked, startled. That I'm getting married first. The fact that Thomas's family has money. That I'm going to have a wedding you couldn't even dream of. I felt my hands clench into fists. Jealous? I smiled bitterly. If I wanted a gorgeous wedding, would have arranged it. But unlike you, I understand the value of money. When Bruce and I get married, we'll have a little ceremony, and we'll save the money for things that really matter, kids, a future. God, you're so smug, Sheila exclaimed, abruptly getting up from the table, her face flushed with anger. You always act like you know what's best for everyone. You're just being greedy and selfish. Anger hit me in the chest, but disappointment was even stronger. I grabbed my bag and headed for the exit, unable to stay in this room anymore, among people I loved more than life, but who were strangers to me now. Am I greedy? I turned around on the threshold, my voice shaking with rage. I gave half of my salary to help our parents, while all you were thinking about was how to spend money that wasn't even yours. I ran out into the night, the cold rain lashing my face, but the tears burning my eyes were hotter. I heard my mom calling my name behind me, but I didn't turn around. All the way home, I tried to convince myself that it was just a bad dream. That my sister would cool off and realize how much she was wrong. That her parents would tell her the truth and remind her of what was really important. 2 weeks after that nightmarish family dinner that finally separated me from my family, I was sitting at my desk in the office, immersed in my usual occupation, making a monthly budget. This process has always given me a sense of control over my life, helped me make plans, even if sometimes I had to make sacrifices in order to make it a little easier for my parents. Bruce and I were going to have dinner tonight, and I wanted to make sure that after making a monthly deposit into a joint account, I would have enough money left for our common expenses. I logged into online banking, moved to the joint account tab with my usual movements, and froze, feeling everything go cold inside. The numbers were clearly flashing on the screen. Balance, $0. My fingers were shaking as I opened the transaction history, hoping it was some kind of mistake, a system glitch, or a ridiculous accident. But no. It was much scarier. A single write-off. $150,000. 3 days ago. My vision went dark for a moment. I stood up abruptly, the chair flew back with a bang, but I didn't care. After saying a short, "I need to leave," to a colleague at the next table, I grabbed my bag and ran out of the office, not even bothering to explain to the boss why I looked like I saw a ghost. The road to her parents' house blurred before her eyes. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles were white with tension, and thoughts were spinning wildly in my head, trying to find at least some excuse for what was happening. Maybe it's the bank's mistake. Maybe someone hacked the account. Maybe they withdrew the money for some important business that they forgot to tell me about. But deep down, I already knew the answer. When I pulled up to their house, both cars were parked in the driveway. So they're home. I didn't knock. I didn't wait for the door to open. I just inserted my old key into the lock and entered, walking briskly into the kitchen, where, as I expected, I found my parents. "Where's the money?" My voice was low but firm, like a taut string. "Where are they?" Mom froze at the sink, her back stiffened, but she didn't turn to me. My father was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, but his gaze was fixed on the dark liquid, as if salvation could be found at the bottom of this cup. What happened to the $150,000 in the account? I took a step forward, scanning their faces for any reaction. "We don't know what you're talking about, honey," Mom said softly. I exhaled sharply, feeling anger boiling inside me. "Don't lie to me." My voice was trembling, but not from weakness, but from the fact that I could no longer hold back. "Someone withdrew all the money 3 days ago. I'm calling the police right now." I took out my phone, but Mom immediately took a step towards me, holding out her hand. "No." She touched my wrist. "Don't call the police." I slowly looked up at her, gradually realizing that the scariest part was just beginning. "Why?" She swallowed, then, hugging herself by the shoulders, as if she was cold, she squeezed out, "I gave them to Sheila. She needed money for the wedding." Time seemed to freeze. "What?" I didn't even recognize my own voice. "Samantha, you do understand." My mother began, but I interrupted her. "You mean you just gave Sheila $150,000? My money? The money that I saved for you so that you could buy a normal house and finally live in safety? She's getting married into a good family," my mother said in a strangled voice, still not looking me in the eye. "We couldn't let her have a low-key wedding. What would they think?" I laughed. Loud, harsh, bitter. What would they think? I slammed my palm down on the table. "They think she's marrying their son because she loves him, not because she's trying to buy their approval with my money." "Everything's going to be fine," Mom added hastily, as if she was afraid I was about to explode. "Sheila promised that after the wedding she would help us buy a new house. She said that when she marries Thomas, they will have a lot of money. She has already promised to send us money every month." I looked at her, and every word she said felt like a punch in the stomach. "Do you hear yourself?" I shook my head, feeling my legs tremble treacherously. "You had $150,000. We only had $50,000 left to save up, and you could leave this death trap. But instead, you gave it all away for a one-day event." "It's not just a party," my father interjected, his voice sounding harsh for the first time. It's an investment in Sheila's future. You don't understand. When will she marry Thomas? I looked around. Cracked walls, sagging ceiling, water stains in the corners. All this could have been fixed. But now, never. You're right, Dad. I don't understand. And you know what? I don't even want to understand. I turned around and headed for the exit, feeling so overwhelmed with disappointment that something seemed to snap inside. You've made your choice. Now live with it. I didn't sleep much that night. Bruce held me in his arms while I was shaking with tears, and then he helped me sit down and make a list of things to do. First thing in the morning, as soon as the sun began to rise above the horizon, coloring the sky in cold pinkish hues, I picked up my phone, opened the banking application and, without hesitation, closed the joint account, which until recently had my hard-earned money, and then immediately opened a new one, in my name, without access for anyone else. This action gave me a strange feeling of relief, as if I had finally cut the invisible rope that bound me to this past full of unjustified hopes and trust, which turned out to be a betrayal. But that alone wasn't enough. I dialed Sheila's number, and as the phone buzzed, waiting for an answer, anger boiled up inside me. She didn't answer the phone, and I was about to leave an angry message, but suddenly on the fourth ring, her voice came over the speaker, cheerful, carefree, full of joyful excitement. "Oh, hello, Samantha." She spoke as if we hadn't spoken in months. "I'm just looking at a place for a wedding. It's an amazing place. You should have seen this view." I gripped the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. "Stop talking nonsense, Sheila," I cut her off coldly. "I know what he did. I know about the money." There was silence on the other end of the line, short but meaningful, after which her voice changed. There was no playfulness in it anymore, only icy indifference. "If Mom and Dad decide to give me money, it's their decision," she said aloof. "You're not responsible for them." I gritted my teeth, trying to keep my emotions under control. "Give them back," I said through pursed lips. "Give them back right now, or I swear to God, Sheila." "Or what?" Her voice was mocking. "Will you call the police?" "Go on, Mom took them legally and honestly." Honestly? I almost laughed at the absurdity of those words. "Samantha, you should be happy for me," she continued with mock kindness. "This is the wedding of my dreams." I squeezed the phone even harder, not believing she was serious. "The wedding of your dreams?" My voice cracked into an angry laugh. "What about Mom and Dad's dream of a safe place to live? Have you even thought about it?" Sheila exhaled loudly, and irritation could be heard in her tone. "Oh, please," she snorted. "They'll be fine. As soon as I marry Thomas, I'll buy them everything they need. His family has connections, and we can probably buy them a house much cheaper than the market value." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it, feeling a dark irony wash over me. "You really believe that, don't you?" I said, not even trying to hide my contempt. "That you will marry for money, and all your problems in life will magically disappear?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What did you tell Thomas about where the money came from?" I asked, and at that moment the tension between us became almost palpable. A long silence. "He doesn't know, does he?" I pushed harder. "Did you tell him that you had money yourself? Does he know that you stole them from our parents' housing stock?" "I didn't steal anything." She suddenly flared up, and there was no fear of exposure in her voice, but wounded pride. I smiled bitterly. "You know what?" she said coldly. "Don't come to the wedding. I don't want to see you there anyway. You'll probably just try to ruin everything with your jealousy and your 'I'm so holy' attitude." The last words were filled with such contempt that I felt really disgusted. I remembered the years when I helped her, when she was in college and she didn't even have money for textbooks, when I paid for her rent, when I supported her after losing her job. I remembered countless times when I put her interests above my own, because I believed that family was the most important thing. Do you know what the difference is between us, Sheila? I spoke calmly, but every syllable was filled with cold fury. I don't need a $300,000 wedding to prove my worth to someone. And when I get married, I'll be able to look my husband in the eye, knowing that I didn't lie to him about the money. She mumbled something, but I didn't listen. I have an appointment with a florist. Don't call me anymore. The connection was cut off. I remained sitting in silence, staring at the phone screen, feeling a strange mixture of emptiness and epiphany. All those years when I defended her in front of Bruce, when I justified her selfishness, saying that she was just young and would outgrow it. It was all a lie that I wanted to believe myself. An hour later, Bruce found me still sitting in the same spot. Have you talked to her? What is it? He asked softly. I nodded silently. She spent it on deposits and bookings, which are non-refundable. Bruce squeezed my hand. And your parents? I laughed bitterly, but it was a laugh that sounded like a sob. They are convinced that she will take care of them after the wedding. They really believe that she will buy them a house with her rich husband's money. Bruce sat down next to her, his gaze warm and understanding. What do you want to do? I thought about it. But to her surprise, she felt neither rage nor despair anymore. Nothing. That word came out easily, calmly, almost liberatingly. They made their choice. All three of them. Now they can live with it. In the months following this confrontation, I threw myself into my work and into planning my own future with Bruce. We found a modest but cozy house, which we really liked, and started saving for a down payment. The news about the preparations for Sheila's wedding reached me through my Aunt Sarah, my mother's sister, who, despite all the tension in our family, managed to maintain relations with both sides at once, as if balancing on a fine line between sympathy and indifference. One afternoon, sitting over a cup of coffee in a cozy cafe, she lowered her voice, as if she was going to tell me something incredible, and began to tell me about the scale of the upcoming celebration, and the more I listened, the more I felt a dull indignation, mixed with some kind of painful irony. You won't believe it, Samantha, this is just absurd. Sarah exclaimed, leaning towards me across the table. The dress alone costs $30,000. I had a hard time keeping my face calm, even though everything inside me was literally boiling with indignation. 30,000? I asked, as if trying to comprehend this figure. And that's not all, she continued with the excitement of discussing someone else's eccentric actions. She releases pigeons during the ceremony. Real white pigeons. And the cake. You have no idea, Samantha. 5-tiered, covered with real gold leaf. I gritted my teeth involuntarily. The money that could have been a chance for a decent life and basic security for our parents was spent without regret on the ostentatious splendor of a single day, which is unlikely to be a happy start to a new life for Sheila, because her marriage was built not on trust and love, but on illusions and deception. But then something completely unexpected happened. That same day, when I was trying to focus on work, convincing myself that I no longer had anything to do with it, Thomas appeared in my office. He was standing at my desk in his perfectly fitting expensive suit, but he looked confused and uncomfortable, like a man who had just been confronted with an unpleasant truth. Can we talk? What is it? He asked, restrained but insistent. I nodded, motioning for him to sit down, even though I had a feeling this conversation wasn't going to bring anything good. I just found out about the money, he began, avoiding my gaze as if ashamed of what he had said. My heart sank, but I remained outwardly calm. What kind of money? I asked, even though I knew the answer perfectly well. About where they really came from, he explained. My parents' accountant was reviewing our finances before the wedding and noticed large deposits in Sheila's account. He asked her a question, and she broke down and told me everything. I slowly leaned back in my chair, not taking my eyes off him. I had no idea, Thomas continued, still shaken. She told me that she had been saving up for years to arrange the wedding of her dreams. I suggested something more modest, but she insisted. And then I found out the truth. I saw him struggling with himself, trying to make sense of what had happened. And now what? I asked calmly. He lowered his head, as if trying to hide his confusion. I do not know. When he left my office, I was left with conflicting feelings. One part of me wanted to warn him, to tell him what he was getting into, how Sheila had been pampered since childhood and how she was used to getting everything she wanted, but the other part understood that he had to come to his conclusions on his own. The wedding day has arrived. It was a sunny June morning, full of warm light and cloudless sky. I didn't attend the ceremony, but later I saw the photos that filled social media. White pigeons soaring in the air, a horse-drawn carriage, a champagne fountain, and a grandiose fireworks display tearing through the evening sky. Everything was exactly as Sheila had dreamed. Everything was paid for with money that could have given our parents a decent old age and security. That night, I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in bed and imagining my parents sitting in the midst of all this absurd splendor, surrounded by luxury, but knowing that they would return to a house that was literally collapsing over their heads. It's been 6 months. Late one evening, my phone rang. The parents' number. I barely answered, but something inside me made me pick up the phone. Mom's voice was quiet and tired, as if she hadn't slept for several nights in a row. I tensed, waiting for him to continue. Everything is bad here, she said after a moment. The house is getting worse. I closed my eyes. What happened? A pipe burst in the bathroom on the top floor last week, and we can't afford to fix it properly, she said bitterly. Your father had to turn off the water for the entire floor. I was silent, waiting for him to continue, even though I already knew where this conversation was heading. We tried to call Sheila, Mom continued. She promised that she would help us after the wedding, but now she says that they have problems with cash flow. Something about the Thomas family business. They had a bad quarter. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my tone neutral. What do you want from me, Mom? There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then she whispered. We made a mistake. I clutched the phone, closing my eyes. Plaster. It fell on your father's head, she whispered. He had to get 3 stitches. The doctor said that we were lucky that it wasn't worse. I opened my eyes, which were filled with tears, and remembered the words of the contractor 2 years ago, when he warned us that the house might not withstand another winter. Have you tried calling Sheila again? Mom's voice, trembling with tension, penetrated me to the depths of my soul, but I did not have time to answer, as her bitter laughter sounded on the phone, unexpected and somehow broken, as if she herself was amused by how ridiculous and hopeless this situation had become. She and Thomas don't talk much, she continued after a short pause. We returned from our honeymoon, already quarreling over money. Apparently, she had exhausted their joint credit cards in the Maldives. Thomas's parents intervened, and, well, it's not good. I listened to her in silence, realizing that there was a lot more drama behind these terse words than she was willing to voice. I'm sorry to hear that, I said automatically, and it took me a second to realize that I really felt that way. Not because I felt sorry for Sheila, she chose her own path and had to understand that any lie, no matter how beautiful, sooner or later falls apart, leaving only ruins in its wake. No, I felt sorry for our parents, blinded by her dreams, themselves gave her what could ensure their future, and now found themselves in a house that was slowly collapsing around them. Could you, Mom's voice broke, and she sighed heavily. Could you maybe help us? I closed my eyes, pressing the phone to my ear so hard that my fingers turned white. Mom. Just because of this pipe. We can't use the bathroom upstairs at all, she continued, as if afraid to hear my refusal. And your father has a backache, he can't sleep properly, because at night he has to go downstairs to use the bathroom. I was silent, letting her words sink in, clinging to some thin strings in my soul, but the longer I thought, the more clearly I realized that I just couldn't, sacrifice my plans for them again. I could see the house that Bruce and I had chosen, the one we had been saving up for, moving step by step closer to the dream of our own cozy space, where there would be no place for family scandals or sacrifices for someone who didn't appreciate it. I remembered the wedding we had planned, though not as lavish as Sheila's, but a real one, filled with love and meaning. "I can't, Mom," I finally said, feeling my heart grow heavy. "I can't help you anymore. You need to talk to Sheila." I heard her sigh heavily, then a short nod, as if she understood everything, but at the same time could not accept my answer. After I hung up, it took me a few minutes to collect my thoughts. And then I dialed Aunt Sarah's number. If anyone could shed light on what my mom was hiding from me, it was her. And I was not mistaken. "Sheila and Thomas live in a luxurious apartment," Sarah said after my question, and there was a slight annoyance in her voice, "the one that his parents bought them as a wedding present, but their marriage is already bursting at the seams." I gripped the phone tighter. "Why?" "Thomas discovered that Sheila had taken out several personal loans to pay for additional wedding expenses," Sarah continued. "And on top of the money she took from your parents." I closed my eyes, feeling something shrink inside. "Meanwhile, your father is still working, although he should have retired a long time ago. The mother is looking for a part-time job. And, Samantha." Sarah paused, as if choosing words to soften the blow. "They've shut down the entire top floor of the house." "Because of the leaks?" I asked in a flat voice. "Yes. And because of the mold." I took a shuddering breath. "They can't live there," I said softly. "They can't," Sarah agreed. "But they don't have a choice. Father is too proud to ask for help." "Yes," she repeated. "And the house is becoming dangerous. Structural damage from water is spreading. They need to either repair it or move out. But they can't afford either." I remembered how 2 years ago I stood in this house with contractors, planning how to make it safe. I remembered their warnings, their insistent recommendations. If only they had trusted me then, and not Sheila's empty promises. Later that evening, Bruce found me at our home office. I was sitting in front of the screen, looking at old photos of my parents' house, taken before it all started, before the walls started to crack, before our family collapsed. "You're thinking about helping them, aren't you?" "What is it?" he asked softly. "No," I answered firmly, even though everything inside was screaming in pain. Bruce looked at me carefully. "Even if you wanted to?" "Even if I wanted to," I repeated, swallowing hard. "We are collecting savings for our own house. I won't set myself on fire to keep them warm. Especially after everything they've done." Bruce nodded, but his voice remained warm and understanding. "But seeing them suffer kills you." I turned to him, and tears involuntarily came to my eyes. "Of course it kills," I said hoarsely. "They're my parents." I ran a hand over my face, trying to pull myself together. "But they chose this, Bruce. They chose Sheila's fantasy over their future. They believed her empty promises, not my real help. And now they have to live with that choice." That night I dreamed about the old house. I was a child again, sitting in my bedroom, and the rain was drumming outside the window, rhythmically, insistently, as if it wanted to tell me something. I looked up and saw a crack slowly spreading across the ceiling. The first drop fell down, followed by the second. I rushed after the buckets, arranging them around the room, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't catch all the drops. They penetrated through the cracks, fell to the floor, blurred the boundaries of my childhood world, and I could only watch helplessly as it cracked and collapsed, as water flooded the floor, taking away everything that seemed so unshakable. 2 years after the wedding, Aunt Sarah called me right at work. I recognized her voice right away, but there was something unusual about it, the intensity that crept into every word, as if she had been gathering her courage for a long time before telling me what she was going to say. And when she finally spoke, she did so without any preliminaries, as if she was afraid that otherwise she would not have the resolve. "Sheila and Thomas are getting divorced," she said abruptly, as if the words left a bitter taste on her tongue. "Sheila's moving back in with your parents." I froze with the phone in my hand, feeling my heart make one uneven beat. Divorce. I wasn't surprised, but I still didn't expect it to happen so soon. The last straw was when Thomas discovered that she had been hiding mail from his parents, and Sarah continued, her voice getting a little lower, quieter, almost tired. Bills for overdue credit card payments, debt notifications. She had been secretly using their shared cards for months, even after he cut her off from them. I closed my eyes, imagining what it all looked like. Thomas standing in the doorway with a pile of opened letters in his hands, his face first distorted with bewilderment and then anger. His parents, who had long suspected something was wrong, but hoped that everything was not as bad as they thought. His parents intervened, Sarah continued, and, well, the prenuptial agreement was tough. "She won't get anything." I was silent. Or rather, she corrected herself after a pause, "She will get debts. About $50,000 in personal debts from wedding loans, plus all the credit card debts she had accumulated trying to maintain a semblance of well-being. Thomas's family is completely washing their hands of her." I took a slow breath, feeling a strange, dull heaviness building in my chest. I remembered the scenes of that lavish wedding, for which $300,000 had been spent. White doves released into the sky to the solemn applause of the guests, a huge cake covered with a golden leaf, sparkling fireworks lighting up the night sky, laughter, wine, music, and all this, smoke, useless, irrevocably burned in the bonfire of vanity. This money could have been my parents' future, could have made their old age safe, stable, and peaceful. But instead, they were spent on 2 years of marriage full of lies and financial machinations. I closed my eyes, and a 3-year-old contractor's warning popped up in front of me. If my parents had listened to me then, if they had accepted my help, they would now be living in a new house, without fear, without debts, without ruined walls and mold. Instead, they continued to work until they were exhausted, growing old in a crumbling house, and now they were going to shelter their unemployed, debt-ridden daughter, who had brought them so much grief. That evening, on my way home, I drove past their house. I didn't stop, didn't get out of the car, didn't go to the door. I just looked at it. Sheila's car was already parked in the driveway, an expensive, beautiful model that she clearly couldn't afford anymore, but she was probably still trying to convince herself otherwise. I could see through the windows that the lights were on downstairs. Shadows moved through the rooms, filling the old house with ghostly silhouettes, bringing my sister back to our childhood, but not in the way we once imagined. The next day, I ran into Sheila at the grocery store where Mom now worked. I wasn't looking for this meeting, but fate apparently decided otherwise. She looked different. Gone were the expensive designer items, gone was the perfect manicure, gone was the impeccably honed facial expression she was used to meeting the world with. Instead, there were plain jeans, an old sweatshirt, and peeling nail polish. She saw me, her eyes flashed for a split second, a flash of recognition, a flash of emotion, but a moment later she looked away, turned the cart around and, without saying a word, quickly headed for another aisle. I didn't follow her. I'm getting married today. I'm standing in front of a mirror in a simple white dress. It does not look like Sheila's luxurious wedding dress, which cost $30,000. It was not created by a designer. It is not studded with crystals. It does not cause admiring glances. But it's mine. And this day is mine too. I think about how different my path is from my sister's. Bruce and I have chosen a quiet ceremony at the courthouse, where only Aunt Sarah and his immediate family will be present. After that, we'll just have dinner at our favorite restaurant. All of this, combined, costs less than just the wedding flowers at Sheila's wedding. Are you sure you don't want to invite them? Bruce asked last night, referring to my parents and Sheila. I shook my head. They made their choice 3 years ago, I said. Now I'm making my own. The last update I received from Aunt Sarah was recent, but it painted a grim picture. Last month, the house was officially declared uninhabitable. Her parents had to move out, and now they live in a small 2-room apartment with Sheila, using their last savings for a deposit. Mom still works at the grocery store. Dad finally had to retire, not of his own volition, but because of health problems that he could no longer ignore. Sheila works as a waitress, trying to somehow get out of the debt pit she has driven herself into. Your mother is asking about you, Sarah recently told me. She keeps your wedding announcement on her bedside table. I sent this ad through Aunt Sarah. Not directly, no. It wasn't an invitation. It was just a notification that I was getting married. Mom tried to call after she got it, but I switched to voicemail. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt, and now they understand this. Sarah said that my parents realized the depth of their mistake, that now they see how dearly their blindness has cost them, that my father admits this is the biggest regret of his life, and if he could turn back time, he would never have chosen the ephemeral fantasy of one daughter over the reality of another. But understanding doesn't change the past. It doesn't return the $150,000 they recklessly spent on the Mirage. It doesn't restore their abandoned house. It doesn't erase the fact that they betrayed me in the worst way when they should have protected, supported, believed. Sheila still lives with them. Her once carefree life in an illusory world of luxury has collapsed, leaving behind only long, exhausting shifts that she has to work to somehow cover the minimum payments on the wedding debt. Her designer clothes were gone, as were her expensive jewelry, her high-status apartment, and the shiny car she had once driven to a new, happy life. Sometimes she writes on social media, reflecting on life lessons, what is really important, and the value of family, but I have long muted her updates because her words ring hollow after everything that has happened. They don't mean anything to me anymore. A package arrived yesterday, from my parents. A wedding gift. I looked at it, standing at the table, and my fingers almost reached for the return address, so that I could immediately send it back without opening it. But something stopped me, either a faint voice of curiosity, or some stubborn desire to know what they thought it possible to give me on the day when I finally closed the door to their world behind me. Inside, among the layers of thin paper, lay my mother's old pearl necklace, the only truly valuable thing she had left. I froze, letting the memories overwhelm me for a moment. My mother, young, laughing, carefully applying the necklace to her neck in front of the mirror, telling me that she got it from her grandmother, that one day she would give it to me. There was also a note next to the jewelry. We should have trusted you. We had to see what you really are, responsible, caring, the one who tried to give us a real future instead of a one-day dream. We're so sorry. We love you. I slowly put the necklace back in the box. Maybe one day I'll wear it. But not today. Today, I have a simple silver pendant around my neck that Bruce gave me for our first anniversary. It's not expensive, it's not flashy, but it's real, like our love, like our plans, like our future. Bruce and I will go home after the ceremony. To the house that we finally saved up enough money for to call our own. There is nothing special about it, just a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet area. But he's ours. Built on careful planning, honest work, and mutual support, and not on dreams based on other people's money, and not on illusions doomed to crumble at the first gust of wind. Ready? Bruce pokes his head into the room, his eyes glowing with warm anticipation. I take one last look in the mirror. My dress is simple, my makeup is minimal, my flowers are from a local flower shop, bought this morning, without any pompous bouquets and expensive decorations. Nothing like Sheila's extravagance. But I'm getting married to the man I love. Surrounded by people I trust. I'm ready to start a life based on reality, not fantasy. I'm ready, I say, and this time the words are full of power. As we drive to court, I think about everything that brought me here. About the lessons I've learned from this story, about how easily people can suck you dry to the last drop if you let them, about how parents' love can be too strong, but it's not what it should be. That one wrong decision can destroy decades of trust and hard work, destroy everything that has been built over the years. But I also learned something else. About the power. About my own power. How to set boundaries. How to choose reality over illusions. How to build a life on solid ground, not on quicksand.